I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello horror hounds, welcome to my horror house. With the recent announcement that Adult Swim will be adapting Junji Ito's Uzumaki into a 4-part animated series, I thought it'd be a perfect time to talk about the work of this horror manga artist that at least I'm aware of. I'm relatively new to Ito's work, but would like to talk to you today not just about Uzumaki, but also Tomie and Gyo. If you can spare a moment to give me a like or even a thumbs down, that would be greatly appreciated. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Grumpy Andrew. I'm a relative newcomer to the work of Junji Ito. My first unwitting experience would have been around 2000 when I saw the film adaptation of Uzumaki. And very recently I read online someone talking about this gorgeous collection, that film only really touched upon about 2/3 of the story contained in the comic. It turns out it's probably about half. So I ordered myself this gorgeous collection and saw that, I was only a couple of chapters in and saw that his other works, Tomie, which after watching one of the movies found out it's pronounced Tomie, and Gyo, equally gorgeous collections. I just bought those two sight unseen and dove head first into the world of Junji Ito, and what a mind-bending world it is. Let's talk about Uzumaki first. It appeared as a weekly serial in big comic spirits between 1998 and 1999. It's the story of a small Japanese town that becomes cursed by spirals. As simple as that. Ito clearly, and I think acknowledges, he draws some inspiration from H.P. Lovecraft, specifically Shadow over Innsmouth. You've got a small coastal town that's overtaken by enormous and ancient cosmic forces that are beyond the understanding of the mortal mind, that slowly morphs and changes the inhabitants of the town as they come under the influence of the spiral. What Ito appears to do magnificently is he starts with a premise like this, a hook. In this case, a town is cursed by a spiral. And then he just plumbs that notion for all it's worth. He doesn't ever expand out sideways. He just digs deeper and deeper and deeper into that central conceit, mining it for all the horror, and I mean all the horror it is absolutely possible to extract out of the setup. In that way, I think it's fairly safe to say that Ito is a fairly high concept artist. By its very nature, that means that the story is episodic. A lot of the chapters share similar story beats, typically with a sort of horrific revelation, lots of nice, clean, straight line artwork, suddenly leading you to the punchline, and here is a huge, horrific, gruesomely detailed picture. That's not to say that Ito repeats himself, rather the spiral insinuates itself into the story in a cavalcade of different ways, and almost like telling a joke, the beats of the story can become a little familiar. So what I would recommend with Uzumaki is that rather than what I did, which was just blast through it because it was such an enjoyable read, which is a viable way to do it, you might want to piece it out, pass it out to yourself. Just take it in little chunks and then leave it for a couple of days, then read another chunk, then leave it for a couple of days to get really the full effect that you would have got if you were reading it in serialized weekly format. Such an innocuous thing to choose as your locus for your horror, the spiral, but absolutely inspired once he starts to excavate down, really drill into the notion. If anyone is at all familiar with the Fibonacci sequence, you already know that spirals are absolutely everywhere, naturally occurring from the small to the huge. So once you start to identify that as your locus of horror, then you will realize, as many of the protagonists in H.P. Lovecraft's stories do, that they are tiny little specks of bugs trapped inside a cosmic web that they have absolutely no understanding of. The sheer imagination on display here is quite staggering. You'll stay for the horror and he will leave you with a mind-bending finale that I think means that Uzumaki will be ultimately for fans of Lovecraft. If you're a fan of The Void, the recent cosmic horror movie, or all things cosmic horror, then Uzumaki is for you. Tomie has all the strengths and all the weaknesses of Uzumaki tenfold. It first appeared as a serial between 1987 and the year 2000. A much longer run than Uzumaki. You can see Ito's art style developing and maturing as you read through the collection. But again, as with Uzumaki, I had to barrel through it. I was enjoying it so much. That really highlights the serialized nature of the story. That said, where the weaknesses are magnified, the strengths are magnified also. Over such a long period, Ito explores the central conceit of Tomie more deeply and more disturbingly than even he was able to in Uzumaki. Tomie is a strange and beautiful young woman, perhaps a kind of succubus, who has the power to make most men fall in love with her, deeply and inescapably. And more often than not, to violent extremes. They will either fall into jealous rages and kill their love rivals, or, as is often the case, their violence and anger will turn towards Tomie herself, and she inevitably, time and time again, becomes the victims of her lover's homicidal rages. But Tomie never dies. She regenerates over and over again, and more to the point, each piece of her will also regenerate. Left in peace, they will all regenerate into perfect versions of Tomie, but not all of them are left in peace. Some grow back wrong. Spots of blood will themselves try to regenerate into little Tomies. And when we get multiple versions of her in the story, all of whom believe that they are the original and one true Tomie, they even go to war with one another. The themes at play here of love, obsession, violence, jealousy, master-slave relationships are deep and incredibly dark. An awful lot of Tomie makes for very uncomfortable reading, but I would strongly recommend Tomie for fans of Ring and The Grudge, because she has a rightful place shoulder to shoulder with the horror icons of Sadako and Kayako. And so we move to Gyo, again serialized weekly in big comic spirits between 2001 and 2002. This is a much shorter story, focused, following one character, so that it reads much less like an anthology title. As a result, it means it reads much better as a collection to just burn through. It's a real rocket-fueled story of fish that seem to have developed legs and begin invading the land. And that's kind of it. The legs are a sort of biomechanical construct, and the fish who utilize them, and then not just fish, all sorts of sea creatures, begin to emit a nauseating stench. Yes, we get the absolutely ridiculous but metal as all hell sight of an enormous great white shark with 6 legs scuttling around on land trying to attack our hero, and it's fantastic and nonsensical at the same time. And Ito just leans into that craziness and full throttle races to the finish line. The story has ties to biological and chemical weapon testing in World War II, and Gyo really, it doubles down and then quadruples down on its insane premise. For its depiction of a world under siege, under insane circumstances, I would say Gyo would be for fans of The Mist and Sharknado. Whoever thought that those two would be bedfellows, but there you go. Because the Gyo collection is relatively short, it comes with a couple of additional stories, standalone stories, The Sad Tale of the Principal Post and The Enigma of the Amigara Fault, which is, I won't tell you anything about it. I would suggest you dig it out and find it for yourself. It reads like a really eerie episode of The Twilight Zone and is one of the most psychologically disturbing things I have ever read. So, are you fans of Junji Ito? Are there other works out there besides these three collections that I've just jumped into feet first that you would recommend for me? What wider reading around? Because I'm absolutely brand new to horror manga. I have some of the adaptations of the Ring stories because I'm a Ring nut, and that's about it. Are there other Junji Ito titles I should be checking out? Are there other manga writers and artists working in the horror field that I should be checking out? Please, please educate me, and thanks for watching.